Good morning. Thank you for attending this webinar. I will start by giving you a brief introduction to the work of the POPs Review Committee between its 8th and 9th meeting. So the committee is the main scientific subsidiary body of the convention. As such, it plays a central role in the operation of the convention, in undertaking the review of proposals for listing of chemicals. These proposals are submitted by parties, and the role of the committee established in the convention is to review such proposals and eventually make recommendations to the conference of the parties on whether these chemicals should be listed under the convention. The committee also plays an advisory role on a number of scientific issues related to the implementation of the convention. For example, it has been involved in the past in the assessment of alternatives to listed chemicals. The committee meets annually for 1 week, usually in October. The next meeting will be in Rome, Italy, from the 14th to the 18th of October. During this meeting, the committee deliberates on a number of issues on its agenda and makes decisions on how its work should proceed. In addition, a significant amount of the work of the committee takes place between its sessions through the work of working groups that have been established to undertake very specific tasks. And so the next meeting, at the next meeting then of the committee, the committee reviews the outputs of the working groups and makes a decision on the way forward. So the role of these working groups is very important. Now, when we come to the listing of new chemicals under the convention, you can see that this is a multi-step process. And in this process, the working groups plays a very important role, because between each session of the committee, each annual session, the working groups work to develop drafts of what is called risk profiles and risk management evaluations. You will hear more about the development of these documents and the evaluation of candidate chemicals in the next presentation. Here is an overview of the tasks on the agenda that the working groups have been mandated to undertake between the 8th and 9th session of the committee. You will hear more in the third presentation on the work on climate change and persistent organic pollutants. So the participation of parties and observers to the work of the Intersessional Work Plan is also very important. And there are several ways in which this contribution can take place. The parties and observers can be part of the working groups. They can also provide information to the work of the working groups when drafts are being developed. And finally, once the outputs of these working groups are circulated for comment, they can then provide their input again here before the final draft is considered by the committee. And of course, at the meeting itself, parties and observers can attend and further contribute. Now, here's a summary of information that have been requested and comments that will be requested regarding the intersessional work of the committee. In orange, it's highlighted those drafts that will soon be circulated for comments to parties and observers. Note that some of the drafts, which are in gray, will only be circulated to the working groups. And finally, the Secretariat asked to facilitate the communication between parties and observers and the working group, and the dissemination of the drafts developed by the working groups. So thank you for your attention on this brief introduction. I will now pass the floor to Gamini, who will give you a more in-depth introduction to the review of chemicals by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Let me just briefly go through the chemicals that are being considered during this intersessional period from POPRC 8 to POPRC 9. Just as Melissa said, this is just again a brief, the same slide that was shown before of the process that takes place in listing new POPs into the convention, which I'm not going to go through again. But some of these chemicals that are being considered this intersessional period are in some of these stages that we are going to discuss. For this intersessional period, we have 4 proposals submitted by EU, and 3 of them, that is the firstly chlorinated naphthalene, hexachlorobutadiene, pentachlorophenol, and its salts and esters, all submitted in 2011 during the POPRC 7. And then short chain chlorinated paraffins was proposed during 2006 POPRC 2. So these are the chemicals that are being considered during this intersessional period for the submission of the outcome to the POPRC 9. Hexachlorobutadiene, and I would take hexachlorobutadiene and of course other chemicals that are in the parallel sessions. And this chemical is actually produced earlier in fluorinated hydrocarbons as an unintentionally generated products, and intentional production ceased in Europe in 1970. But still there are large quantities generated during this production and use. Uses, various historical uses, examples are intermediate in chemical and metallurgical industry, solvent, transformer fluids, and insecticides. Status under international agreements regulated under the UNECE Convention on Long-Range Transboundary Air Pollution, priority hazardous substances in EU, and OSPAR list of substances of possible concerns. This OSPAR is Oslo and Paris Convention on biodiversity protection of North-East Atlantic. And if you take chlorinated naphthalenes, there are almost about 75 possible congeners with 1 to 8 chlorine atoms substituted around the naphthalene molecule. Global production since early 20th century, and calculated amounts are ranging from 150,000 to 200 tons and decreasing since 2070s, and eventually stopped production some time back. Historically, the uses include preservatives for wood, additives in paints and engine oils, cable sheets, dielectric fluids, and veterinary medicines. Status under international agreements, regulated under UNECE again, Convention on long-range transport air pollution, and priority hazardous chemicals substance in EU, and OSPAR list of chemicals for priority action. And the process of these two chemicals, as I said, they were introduced during POPRC 7, and during the at POPRC 7, it was agreed that it meets the Annex D criteria, and the intersessional period between POPRC 7 and 8, the chemicals were the risk profiles were developed, and the risk profiles were considered during POPRC 8 and adopted as appropriate. And then during the intersessional period from POPRC 8 to POPRC 9, the ad hoc working group was established to gather information from parties and observers to develop the risk management evaluations, which will be circulated to the parties and observers for their comments by 1st of April 2013, in few weeks, and then the parties are requested to submit their responses by 24th May 2013 as agreed by the work plan, and then the revised draft risk management evaluation will be finally submitted for POPRC for its consideration at its 9th meeting. So the most important thing is that the draft management evaluation will be circulated, and the comments are expected from parties and observers by May 2013. If you take pentachlorophenol, this actually is a chemical produced worldwide since 1930, and this was again considered during the POPRC 7, and it has very interesting situation in a way, because in the environment it converts into pentachloranisole, and this is one of the situations that was considered during this POPRC 7 and 8. And the production of pentachlorophenol globally was estimated in 1983 about 90,000 kilograms, and one of the recent figures, of course, we have is from the Americas, that is around 7,000 tons in 2009, and that indicates that PCP is still being produced and used, and the main use currently is wood preservation, but historically this has been used in many other areas like biocide, pesticide, disinfectant, defoliant, and many others since the 1930s. Transformation product and metabolite of other organochlorines such as hexachlorobenzene, lindane, and quintoxine. The status under international agreements similar to the other chemicals, except that this is actually subject to Rotterdam Convention on transbound removal of hazardous chemicals and pesticides. OSPAR list of chemicals for priority actions in its third North Sea conference, that was 1990. And as I said, during the POPRC 7, when it was considered, when it was considered to see if it meets the Annex D criteria, the committee considered that it does not meet all screening criteria specified in Annex D. However, pentachloranisole, its transformation product, met screening criteria of specified in Annex D. Then the ad hoc working group was requested to prepare further information with additional data from fate and environmental fate and transport of pentachlorophenol and pentachloranisole, and transformation of pentachlorophenol to pentachloranisole, because pentachloranisole could be transformed from other sources, other substances as well. So the question was how much is produced from pentachlorophenol into pentachloranisole and vice versa. At POPRC 8, this additional information was considered, and the committee decided that the PCP does not meet all screening criteria of NXD. However, taking into consideration that PCA meets the criteria, the committee decided to go to the next step, and that is to prepare the risk profile of PCP. And the information was collected from observers and parties and observers, and the ad hoc working group now preparing the draft risk profile, which will be circulated again in April 2013, and comments are expected from parties and observers by 24th May 2013. Then the revised draft risk profile will be presented to POPRC 9 for its consideration. So basically, the information that is necessary is on the draft risk profile from the parties and observers. If you take the short chain chlorinated paraffins, this has a long history though. As I said, it was there from 2000 POPRC 2. Production currently produced in many countries, example United States, EU, Russia, India, China, Japan, Brazil, and Slovakia. Uses metalworking, lubricant, paint, adhesives, solvent, sealants, plastic, rubber, and flame retardants, and status under international agreements, again regulated under UNECE and OSPAR. And as I said, this has a history that it started at POPRC 2, and it met POPRC considered that it meets the NXD criteria. However, at POPRC 3, when the risk profile was considered, it was the consensus was that it does not meet the requirements and the risk for the risk profile to be adopted. And further work was requested by for the Intersessional Working Group, and then again it was considered at POPRC 6, and the consensus again could not be reached on the adoption of the risk profile at POPRC 6. And then additional work was considered, especially considering toxic interaction of chlorinated paraffins, and then at POPRC 8, the consensus still could not be reached to adopt, and between POPRC 8 and POPRC 9, additional information from parties and observers are requested, and for the ad hoc working group to discuss application of NXD criteria to SCCP, and to see if there is any new information to make any revisions to the draft profile and presented for POPRC 11. And that ends my brief introduction to the substances considered, and perhaps I can request Quebec to take over the floor. Quebec itself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Damini, for your great presentation. Now I pass the floor to our last presenter, Liselott.
Hello. Nice to be asked to have this presentation. It has already been Intersessional work done last year, and we are now continuing our work on this issue. I have been a drafter of the documents under this elements in this work also for this year forward. So now I'll start my presentation. As I said, it has been 2 documents. It's a draft guidance that we worked on last year, and that is also a draft simplified approach we have developed in this intersessional period. The revision of the draft guidance have been done on the basis of input from the committee at its 8th meeting, and we also received some comments too late in the previous intersessional period and some in the meeting last year, and they will be included in the second draft this year. Further comments have been forwarded to us as of 15 January 2013. And we are now working looking at those comments. The draft simplified approach has 3 parts. It's the introduction, explaining the concept and the mandate, and it's a part dealing with the methodology, and it's a basic scheme that is a step-by-step guidance on how we can apply the information on climate change impact in our reviews on nominated chemicals in the POPRC committee. And in the end, there is an annex with a summary table of climate change and POPRC with reference to chapters in the draft guidance. The methodology is based on the systematically narrative review usually used by POPRC. And we think that this will be a good way to also look at those matters. It should be science-based and has to be looked at chemical by chemical and apply specific chemical information on the climate change effect on the chemical under review. If that is not available, it could be possible also to use information from analogous substances. The weight of evidence approach has been the basis of the POPRC methodology, and it's also evident to use here. The precautionary approach is very important under the Stockholm Convention, and it's evident here since this is climate change is based on projections in the future. It should be used quantified criteria combined with qualitative methods, and the information should be integrated in a balanced manner. We seek to include information from all regions and relevant stakeholders if available. We have also had discussions on how to deal with regional differences and uncertainties, and try to give some guidance as well on this. We have concluded so far that it would be that the best way forward would be to use the documented uncertainties in the data reviewed, and to use the observed and projected regional differences if available from IPCC, the International Panel for Climate Change. And as POPRC usually do, we should also here evaluate the scientific quality and relevance or reliability of the data. There are also criteria put out in the simplified approach for how you could evaluate different types of data, such as modeling data, data from laboratory experiments, field studies, and so on. The second part, the document describes basic scheme for the review, and it includes 3 steps in a step-by-step procedure. The first step is to collect relevant information. The relevant information is defined in table in the annex of the simplified approach. And as I said before, there are also references to the guidance that have more background information. It is always parties can provide information on climate change and chemical interaction in the question round using the Annex E and F format for risk profiles and global management evaluation developed by the POPRC for the review process of every chemical. But it is recommended to collect also additional information. This can be done by doing a desktop study with a literature search and relevant scientific journals and consultation with relevant stakeholders such as the Arctic Monitoring Assessment Program, the International Panel for Climate Change, etc. The type of information that should be gathered is peer-reviewed scientific data, risk assessment, chemical and on climate change for both, management evaluations, risk reduction analysis, life cycle management evaluation. But it could also be other data that could be of interest for the review of the chemicals when looking at the climate change effect. In the second step, try to describe how the nominated. Second step handles how we should integrate relevant information in the different review stages in the review process of new chemicals. In the nomination report, the nominating party can provide data on climate change and chemical interaction in the statement of the reason of concern. In the risk profile, it is appropriate to provide this kind of information in the part that deals with environmental state and transport. This is because climate change affects the distribution and transport of chemicals. It will also be relevant to add this kind of information in the part dealing with the hazard assessment, since climate change can increase the vulnerability of organisms for POPs or other chemicals. It would also be relevant to include in parts dealing with sources and exposure. Climate change has been predicted to affect the revitalization of POPs from source in sediment soil, snow, glaciers, etc. And this may increase the exposure of organisms to POPs. In the development of the global management evaluation, it is most relevant for the part dealing with the positive and or negative impacts on society or measures. In both the risk profile and in the global management evaluation, climate change effect interaction with chemical under review could be included if relevant and decided by POPRC in the synthesis and the conclusion. In step 3, the information should be applied in the decision making if relevant. In the screening phase, climate change and POP effects are relevant for the decision and the need for further examination of global risk. When it comes to the Annex D criteria conclusion on participants by accumulation, participants, and long-range transport, it should only be based on the inherited properties of the chemical. In the risk profile, the reason behind this is that the physiochemical and biological processes in the environment and that are affected by climate change and thereby have an impact on a rental phase of constant exposure and vulnerability of organisms to the chemical, but it will not impact the intrinsic properties regarding the subsistence, ability to bioaccumulate its system, and ability to be transported long distances in the environment. I'm almost finished, so I hope I can continue. In the risk profile, it's important for the decision on the potential for risk, when deciding on the potential of the risk of the chemical, when they are looking at endpoints in the hazard assessment. And it's also important when looking at the evaluation of environmental phase and transport, as climate change can increase the propagation and distance transported for chemicals. And in the global management evaluation, as I said before, it's important when deciding and evaluating the positive and negative impact on society of identified possible measures. And it could be relevant for the conclusions in both the risk profile and the global management evaluation if decided relevant by POPRC. This is the last slide, and this is the work plan we have between the 18th and 19th meeting of POPRC. The next deadline is the 3rd of June 2013, where there will be finalized the second draft of the guidance on climate change to persistent organic pollutants and second draft on the simplified approach to the application of the guidance. At the 3rd of June, there will be a teleconference to discuss comments and solutions in the text of the second draft. And the finalization of the simplified approach will be at 28th of June, and the finalization of the draft guidance will be 19th of August. Thank you for listening.